If I was to start with guitar again, these are the 5 pieces of advice I'd give to myself. Plus we've got a special guest. Stick around. Hello everyone, it's James from Practice Like a Pro, providing you with simple, clear guitar tips to help you on your guitar playing journey. So, these are 5 pieces of advice that I'd have for anybody starting out, and these are the things that I do differently upon reflection of my guitar playing journey. So my first one is to only concentrate, I wish I'd only concentrated on 4 chords at once. Now, I did, like a lot of guitar players do, I bought the book in the shop, which was the 1,000 Guitar Chords That You Must Know, or the Open Chord Bible, or whatever kind of iteration of a book this thick full of chord shapes. I genuinely sat down as a kid and tried to memorise every chord shape in the book. And the only ones that I can really remember outside of the obvious C, G, D, and your bar chord shapes, etc. The only ones that I can remember are the really, really tricky ones that I never use. And I spent so much time trying to get them, and I feel like I wasted a lot of time doing that. What I'd advise instead, and what I'd say to myself if I was to learn again, was pick 4 or 5 chords for a song that you really want to learn to play, and just shed those. Get really, really good at them. Then, once you've got those, move on to another 5. And another 5, and another 5, etc. And before you know, you'll have this vocabulary of chords that you can play extremely well, and you're not at the beginning stages trying to figure out what an E flat 7 sharp 9 is, which is the Hendrix chord. Everybody knows is the Hendrix chord. It sounds great, but when you're trying to strum through Wonderful Tonight, that's not very useful. My second tip would be the finger per fret rule. So I'll put a card up. I did a video on the finger per fret rule, and I think it's something that a lot of new players neglect. And it's the idea that you use all 4 fingers to cover a 4 fret radius on the guitar, and you can... It's awesome dexterity exercise, and when you see people playing, they seem like it's, they put no effort at all into it, and it's all so effortlessly and flows, and that's because they're using all 4 digits, and sometimes the thumb as well. Now, I didn't do this for quite a long time, and it wasn't until I sort of got into formal education that another player kind of said, "Oh, you don't do that, maybe if you did, it'd be a really good idea." And I wish I'd started that sooner, because my dexterity would have improved from the beginning instead of me having to backtrack and do it again. Another thing that I wish I did was take solos more seriously. Now, I understand creativity is really important with guitar, and a lot of people want to write their own solos and do that sort of stuff. I kind of took that and ran with it and was lazy. So I'd get to a point in a solo as a teenager that was either too fast or too difficult, or I couldn't hear on the record what was happening, and then I'd just start to improvise. I'd just start to play what I wanted to. Now, my improvisations got pretty good, if I do say so myself, as a result of that, but I wish I'd transcribed the solos and really stuck with it. And because I couldn't play it, obviously there's something there that I could have learned from that, but I just chose to whittle about with a pentatonic scale instead. So that's the first thing, but sort of as an aside to that, I wish I had actually picked apart the solos as well, rather than just decoding the numbers, on the tab like most of you are probably looking at your solos. I wish I'd actually picked out the notes. Okay, this is an E, this is a C sharp, this is a D. What scale is this using? Is it an arpeggio? Where are all the, and find, something like, if you were to take a more academic approach and pick apart the solo for Sultans of Swing, for example, you'll see that Knopfler's using arpeggios all over the shop. As a teenager, I'll have completely missed all that and just thought it was in A minor or D minor, whichever way that you look at it. So I think I wish I had that more mature approach. So my fourth thing that I'd say to myself is, when I started playing, my parents did the old-fashioned thing that a lot of parents do when you want to learn guitar. They buy you an acoustic guitar first. I didn't want an acoustic guitar. I wanted to play Nirvana songs, and wanted to do all, and play Metallica and all these, all this electric guitar music. So I got an acoustic guitar from Argos, which for those of you outside the UK is like a big catalogue sort of. It's more online now kind of store that a lot of people get beginner things for hobbies from. It's a bit like Sears to the American guys. I wish I'd have started on electric because I got my acoustic for the Christmas, and then it's my birthday in the March, and I got an electric guitar, and the acoustic guitar went in the cupboard and didn't come out for another 2 years. Since then, I've discovered how the artistry of fingerstyle guitar, and it is just such a completely different world to electric guitar, and I learned so much from studying fingerstyle players, and it's a really, really important part of my practice to me is fingerstyle guitar. Now, as an older person, I've kind of discovered that sort of into my 20s, but that first guitar that I got was just a waste of money because, like I say, once the electric came, it was a Strat copy, a seafoam green Strat copy. I loved it. I played it for a long time. It was just a waste of money. I might as well have started with what I wanted. And a lot of people say, "Oh, well, your fingers will harden up, and then you can move on to electric, and it's easier." I disagree. I think you pick the guitar that when you look at it, you absolutely love the way it looks and the way it sounds, and you're more inclined to pick it up. I played that electric guitar for far more hours than the acoustic guitar, and I think that's really important for players. Go with your interests to keep playing and keep getting the hours in, thus progressing. The fifth and final thing that I'd say to myself is don't worry so much about memorising scale shapes. Now, I'm not saying that that's not important, but what I'm saying is if I was to do it again, I would learn 1 or 2 shapes really well, but not just learn them and memorise them on the fretboard, learn how to use them. Learn the intervals that are in them. Learn what makes it sound the way that it does. Rather than putting that energy into memorising 5 positions for 5 different kinds of scale, or you're going through your modes of the major scale, which a lot of people jump to way too early. If you don't know what that is, don't worry about it till further down the road. If you can't play your major and your minor scale in all 5 positions, including the major and the minor pentatonic, you're not ready for that, okay? It is a cool concept, but you've got to be ready for it to understand it. I wish I'd put that energy into understanding the way that scales worked, and also doing some studies on certain guitarists that use that scale and see how other people have used it and try and be a bit more creative with it rather than just reciting scales. Yeah, that's great, but when you improvise with it and it sounds really mechanical, you need to kind of go back to the drawing board, and I'd start with position 1, learn a couple of solos that have position 1 in, add position 2, softly, nice and gradual, and I think you'll get a lot more fulfillment. It'll take a lot longer, but as things do take a lot longer, you'll get so much more out of it. So I was recently on a Zoom call with another YouTube guitar teacher called Dave from DMC Guitar Tuition. He's not actually that far away from me, he's a really nice guy. And in preparation for this video, I just asked him what he'd do differently. Here's what he had to say. Right, and David, thanks for joining me. So I'm making a video on if I was to start playing again, if I was to completely go to ground level and not know anything about these,
yeah,
what would I tell myself if I was to start again? What I wish I'd done differently and how I'd go about it. I just wanted to pick your brains a little bit about that. If you were to start from ground level again, what would you do differently compared to how you learnt to play?
Oh wow. It's trying to remember back 30 years when I started playing. That's I don't even know what I had for breakfast. Never mind that. Yeah, I think it'd be really make my mind up of what type of player I want to be.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? So, because when you have a tutor when you're young and you sort of sometimes go along with it, and that's cool, but you just having the confidence into yourself and just saying, hang on a minute, I don't like classical music, so I don't want to do that.
Right, okay.
Because a lot of tutors do hit you straight away with classical and reading and stuff, and they say it's got to be this way, but just having that confidence to know what do you like about music and then follow that route. I think it's hard when you're a kid though, or you're young, to have that confidence. But if you're an adult, you should have that confidence. I like this style of music.
Yeah.
Let's do this.
I think that's really important to pursue the things that you're interested in. Like you said, the sort of reading music and, classical study. It is important, but I was a professional musician for 5 years before I could read a note of music.
Yeah.
And I've always taught and stuff. I never taught classical guitar. I said, I'm not the guy. You want to learn classical guitar, you need to go to somebody else. But since then, I have learned classical guitar and I can read quite well now and all that sort of stuff.
I think it's good when you want to take it up a notch and you really want to make it your livelihood. But not as someone, a lot of times people just want to do it for just recreational. It's a bit of fun.
Yeah.
So why go too deep? And I think it's enough to scare people off in the first instance.
And I think we're both in this boat that we learn long enough ago before the internet was what it is now,
Yeah.
And I think if I was to do it again differently, it's like what both me and you do on YouTube, the guitar lessons, I'd be all over that like a rash.
Yeah, I wonder what we would be like now if we had the internet. When we were younger. We'll only know in like 20 years time when them youngsters who were watching YouTube how they are now, but it's a wealth of knowledge. I didn't have any of it. I was trying to work it out myself.
Yeah, but that's one thing. That's one thing that I think the old.
Is that a pro or a con?
Well, my ear, I work out. Like I said, I didn't read music for years and years and years. But my ear's really good. I can hear something on the radio and pick it up because that's what I was doing. I was just listening to records and going, is it a G chord? Is it a C?
That's all you had, a tape cassette and the album you loved.
I'm not that old. Mine was CDs.
I'm not old. All you had is your gramophone and, do you know what I mean?
But yeah, I look at some kids. So there's a young lad that I teach and he's 15. And I've taught him for a couple of years now, and I sort of think the rate that he's bearing in mind he's like doing Metallica solos, Iron Maiden, he's well into all that stuff, as you are in your teenage phase. He's going through it, he'll grow out of it. I never did, but I'm hoping he will. And he just reminds me of when I was that age, and it's about that time from 14 to 16 that the guitar never left my knee. I progressed so much more in that 2 year period than I have done before or since, just because that's what I were into and that's what I was doing. And I think the internet gives you this. You've got the ability to kind of bounce around and learn from lots of different sources. Whereas I went to one guitar teacher. Yeah. And I did study with him for a couple of years, and then I went to another guitar teacher, studied with him for a couple of years, and then I went off to uni and, and did all that kind of stuff and studied under, 3 or 4 different people at the same time. Yeah. And I think if I'd have had all that influence before going into more formal education with the guitar, I'd have such a wider array of styles and be able to play so much more. But also, I've got it at my fingertips now. Nothing's stopping me now doing it. It's an interesting.
I think it's just the will. The older you get, the will to learn, especially if you're a guitar teacher or a professional musician. It's your job as well, and you need serious inspiration to learn new stuff. Which it happens, but it happens a bit rarer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I think.
Yeah. So is there anything else that you think you'd do a little bit differently?
Yeah, I think I was obsessed in speed a lot.
Right. Okay.
And I don't know whether it's a pro or a con.
Okay.
I think it might have been good in my early days to do that. And I did practice with a metronome, which I'm really glad my older brother told me to do that.
Right, okay.
I think that I watch a lot of fast guitarists and they are quite sloppy. And I think because you can see they don't feel timing.
That's really interesting because I never did. I never practiced with a metronome. I didn't even know what one was until I went to college, and
did you eventually practice with one?
Yes, I did, but I tell you what, it took me ages. It took me ages to get it. And it is a common theme in bands that I work in that James can't count to 4. My timing's not that great. I mean, it has improved massively since, but that's something I wish that I'd done. bought a metronome early on.
metronome, because I mean I was hitting it at like 40 BPM and playing
Really?
like semi-quavers. So you really got that is your that is your metronome. If you can play in time with that, that's harder than like a really fast beat. That's pretty spells it out easy. So I'd say practicing, but slow it. Feel what it's like to play slow.
Yeah.
I think it's easier to learn to speed up, but I think if you practice fast all the time, I see it with players all the time. They practice so fast when they don't know how to play slow anymore.
Yeah. I think as well, one thing just sort of off the top of my head is I know you're predominantly teach on acoustic guitar, don't you? That's your sort of bag on YouTube.
The reason why I do it is because a lot of people have acoustics, and playing rock riffs, I don't want it to feel like it's not for them. It's to me, it's just a tool with a.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, to be honest, with me, it's just the one that's nearest. I'll just pick up
exactly.
But one thing I wish I'd done, because don't get me wrong, I love acoustic guitar. Fingerstyle guitar is one of my passions, doing the whole Tommy Emmanuel thing and all that kind of stuff. But I do like rock and roll as well. I'm really into that sort of stuff. But I wish that I'd spent more time playing with the clean channel of my amp rather than the dirty channel, so I could hear where the mistakes were.
Exactly.
Because distortion masks loads of stuff.
That's it. And that's, I think, like what you said there, that's another reason I like the acoustic, because you can't hide behind it.
I think as well it's a functional thing as well, because the strings are a bit thicker. I assume you've got 12s or something on yours, but it's an actual workout for your palm, and when you start doing bar chords and those sort of things, you really know about it on acoustic guitar, don't you?
I do always encourage it though. If anyone wants to learn, they think like the electric's the next step up, and I'm like, no, go for the electric straight away. Get used to the shapes and the feel. Yeah. And then, because the acoustic, like you said, it is a harder tool to press down, and it's tougher on your fingers, and you've got all the obstacles of just learning shapes on top of pressing down on thicker strings, and you don't realise that as a beginner, I don't think.
Well, as well, I hope you enjoyed today's video. If you did, please let us know in the comments. I've also put a link to Dave's channel in the description. If you're interested, he does more kind of like song lessons and singing and playing and strumming kind of stuff. He's a great teacher. Go check him out. You'll definitely learn something. If you like what we do at Practice Like a Pro, please do consider subscribing. We upload 3 lessons a week. And if you'd like to learn something else and do a little bit of playing instead of listening to me talk, maybe check out some of these videos. Until I see you next time, thank you very much. Keep practicing like a pro. Cheers.